Sati Into Pravoya Vyayatasya Vande Guru Shri Yasya Prasada Bhagavad Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Gatovi Dayanstu Nastasya Yashasti Sankam Vande Guru Shri Adonai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisances to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing, and playing musical instruments, the spiritual master is always gladdened with the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisances to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in temple worship of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisances to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzed as that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. But the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad. He is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisances to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hari Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Karamare Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu daya karo more, toma bina kedaro, jagat sansare, toma bina kedayalo, jagat sansare, patika pavana Bhagavata Patika Pavana Hetu Bhagavata Mosama Padita Prabhu Napaimeya Mosama Padita Prabhu Napaimeya Prabhu Nitai Nanda Premananda Sukhi Prabhu Nitai Nanda Premananda Sukhi Kripa Bolo Kana Koro Nivaro Dukhi Kripa Bolo Kana Koro Nivaro Dukhi Daya Koro Sitapati Advaita Gosai Daya Koro Sitapati Advaita Gosai Tava Kripa Kole Pai Chaitanya Nitai Tava Kripa Kole Pai Chaitanya Nitai Mahaswarup Sanatana Rupa Raguna Mahaswarup Sanatana Rupa Raguna Tata Juga Shiva Prabhu Lokana Tata Juga Shiva Prabhu Lokana Daya Koro Shri Achaya Prabhu Srivas Daya Guru Shri Achaya Prabhu Srivas Ramachandra Sangamage Narottamora 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 Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Guru Mode Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Guru Mode Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
What do you go to get? But the fashion bag in Mariadi. What are the unity?
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, my humble obeisances. Kusha.
Hare Krishna.
How are you?
By Krishna's mercy, we are still breathing some air. How are you too?
I'm surviving.
Good. We should continue.
I was trying to call you. After the class, I will call you.
Okay, Prabhu.
Okay.
All right.
So you can start, please.
All
Stephen,
right.
I've given you the admin, the host.
So, what is his name?
Stefan.
Hare Krishna, correct it. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. What is his name? Salika Prabhu is not here. Eh?
It's not yet here.
Oh, he has the PowerPoints.
He will soon come.
He will soon come.
Mm.
Okay, I want him to share the PowerPoints on the screen.
Okay, maybe we play the music and wait for him to come.
Well, I can say my prayers and then
okay.
We can be, overviewing a little that we studied last week. Then we see when it will come soon.
Okay, Prabhu.
Yeah. Thank you. Omagyana Timridasya Gyanan Ganashalakaya Chakshuromlitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutane Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuktapada Kamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sahagrajatam Sahagana Ragnastam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Samadutam Pajanasahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitamscha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Niti Namini Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Sri Padmane Sri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Niti Namini Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirmese Sastri Avadi Pasachari Satarini Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namini Gauratrizai Namaha Nityanando Vatutendur Vasoda Pranavala Baha Janavir Jivita Patir Krishna Prema Prabhu Padmavati Sutta Srimam Sachirananda Purvajaha Mavam Mata Jagat Rakta Rakta Gaura Kile Varaha Advaitam Harinadvaita Racharyam Bhakti Shamshanat Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakti Shantikum Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopita Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surato Pango Mama Madirgat Masarvaswa Padam Bhujo Radha Mandana Mohano Divya Vrindaranya Kalpadurmada Srimad Radha Jara Simhastanoshtau Sri Sri Radha Srila Govinda Dev Krishyalivi Sivya Manos Marami Shrimam Rasa Rasarambi Vamsi Vata Tata Sita Karasan Venus Vanai Gopi Gopinata Sri Sunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Bindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priyai Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So everyone is welcome to today's session. Last week we couldn't do much because of the internet problem that I experienced. One devotee even had to send me some credit for my MTN, yet it couldn't work. I hope we can move faster and cover ground today. So I hope Salika Prabhu will join us soon so that we can use the PowerPoint. I sent it to him because the I'm using is and the storage is very limited, and so it doesn't accept anything heavy. So I try to use my wife's laptop, but the sound is not coming. So I have to send the PowerPoint to Shanti Prabhu, who is our moderator, so he can share. So I covered the lesson 1 to the 30th slide. So we're supposed to begin from the 31st slide, which is talking about, which is comparing the devotees, great devotees and acharyas to sharks. The ocean of devotional service, as the title spells out, Bhakti Ras Amrita Sindhu. Sindhu means an ocean. The Nectarian ocean of Bhakti, the meaning of the title of this course, Bhakti Ras Amrita Sindhu, the Nectarian ocean of Bhakti. So this Nectarian ocean of Bhakti is very, very deep. Actually, even in this course, we're only scratching the top because it is so deep that it goes beyond academic or scholarly abilities. It is written in the Ujjwala Nilamani, the book that is written by Srila Rupa Goswami describing the details of Madhurya Ras. It said that scholars and academicians will be lost when they read the Ujjwala Nilamani, because the knowledge describing the Madhurya Ras is beyond the comprehension, is beyond the understanding of any scholar or academician in this world. It is completely divine, and therefore it cannot be touched by any mundane academic or scholarship. So therefore it is said here that the great devotees and acharyas are compared to sharks. Sharks do not swim in rivers. Sharks, they are always found in the sea, in the deep sea, because they are such huge animals, huge fishes, that they cannot enter the small, tiny rivers. So the only place of play where they can be found is in the deep ocean. So the fruity workers and the Gyanis, Mayavadis, they swim in the rivers of Gyan, rivers of karma. They are very shallow. But the devotees, they dive deep into the ocean of nectar, the ocean of bhakti, which is very, very deep. So Srila Prabhupada writes in the Nectar of Devotion, let us offer our respectful obeisances to all the great devotees and acharyas who are compared to sharks in the great ocean of nectar and who do not care for the various rivers of liberation. And personalists are very fond of merging into the supreme, like rivers that come down and merge into the ocean. The ocean can be compared to liberation, and the rivers to all the different paths of liberation. The impersonalists are dwelling in the river water, which eventually comes to mix with the ocean. So devotional service here is compared to the ocean. Bhakti is compared to the ocean. And the different paths are compared to rivers. Because ultimately, all the rivers empty their waters into the ocean. So it is said that Bhakti is actually the source of everything else. And if one does not practice Bhakti, his practices, whether it's Gyan, Karma, or Yoga, will not bear the desired results. So therefore, the great acharyas and great devotees, they do not take pleasure in these shallow rivers. They do not pursue the path of philosophical speculation, in personal liberation, or even fruitive activities. The devotees, they want to taste the nectar of devotion, Bhakti Amrita, Krishna Bhavamrita. The nectar coming from Krishna is very deep, and therefore the devotees and acharyas, they take pleasure in diving to this deep, deep ocean of Krishna consciousness, of bhakti. So therefore, devotees are compared to sharks. There are three reasons.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada.
You're welcome. We are waiting for you.
Please forgive me. My internet also was becoming disturbing today.
I see.
I had to use my other second line.
I see. So I've transferred my problem to you today.
Okay.
So you can share
the screen.
The screen, yeah, so that we can follow the PowerPoint.
Okay.
So we are starting from the first lesson. We are continuing from slide 31.
Slide number what?
31.
21.
Yes, start from 31 because when I could not share, I was following the slides. I went up to 30, so we begin from 31 today. That's lesson 1.
Is it this one?
No, you still go down. This is 21.
What number?
31.
This is 21. Go to 31. 31. You're going up. You're going up. Rather go down.
Okay, let me start from the first one. When I get there, you tell me.
Yeah. So you go down. I'll tell you.
I should go on.
Yeah, keep going. Keep going. When you get there, I'll tell you. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. 31. Keep going.
Is it this one, Maharaj?
No, go down, further. 10 slides more. Go 10 slides more. Yes, go down. 28, okay. 29, 30, 31. Okay, the next one. Okay, good. That's it.
This one.
31. Next one. Back. 31.
Go back.
31. Again. Up. You are going down. Go up. Back again. Back to 31. No. You are still going down. Go up. I mean, backwards. You're at 30.
Back.
You're on 35 now. Go back to 31.
21.
31.
31.
Yes.
Okay, this one.
Yes. Thank you. So we can all see the slide I was reading. Great devotees are acharyas compared to sharks. So I've already explained. Let us offer respectful obeisances to all the great devotees and acharyas, holy teachers who are compared to sharks in the great ocean of nectar, and who do not care for the various rivers of liberation. Impersonalists are very fond of merging into the supreme, like rivers that come down and merge into the ocean. The ocean can be compared to liberation, and the rivers to all the different paths of liberation. The impersonalists are dwelling in the river water, which eventually comes to mix with the ocean. So I was saying that devotees are compared to sharks for 3 reasons. 1, sharks enjoys the waters as the king of the ocean. So a devotee swims in the ocean of devotion, enjoying the ambrosial waters of Bhakti. Sharks are the kings of the ocean. So they take pleasure in swimming in the ocean. They don't care about the small rivers. Obviously, sharks are so huge, they are so great, they cannot swim in the rivers. So devotees do not care about impersonal liberation. They do not care about Maya philosophy, because this philosophy do not produce the nectar of devotion. So therefore, devotees, they swim in the ocean of devotion. 2, a shark never leaves the ocean for the land. Never. It never leaves the ocean for the land or for the small rivers. Similarly, a devotee never leaves the ocean of nectar for insignificant, landlocked material pleasure, not even for the shallow rivers of pseudo-spiritual uplands. 3, a shark cannot be caught by fishing nets because it swims deep in the ocean, where the material net of time cannot reach, and which brings material existence. So the devotee who is swimming in the ocean of bhakti cannot be caught by the nets of time. Time is like a net that catches everybody who is not swimming deep in the ocean of devotion, and that produces material existence. Material existence is due to the net of time. The net of time catches everyone and throws them back into material existence. But for a devotee, because he's swimming deep into the bhakti, the nectar of devotion, Amrita Sindhu, he cannot be caught by the ocean, the net of time. And therefore, a devotee does not go through repeated birth and death. A devotee goes back home, back to the spiritual world. So for these 3 reasons, the devotees are compared to sharks. One is that sharks enjoy the waters as the king of the ocean, and similarly, devotees swim deep in the bhakti ocean and enjoy the ambrosial waters of bhakti. 2, sharks never leave the ocean for the land or for small rivers. Similarly, a devotee never leaves the ocean of nectar for insignificant landlocked material pleasures. And 3, a shark cannot be caught by the fishing nets of time because he swims deep in the ocean. So therefore, because of these 3 characteristics, devotees are compared to sharks. If you go to the next slide, 32. Go to the next slide, 32. Okay. It says, devotees eternally live in the ocean of devotional service and do not care for rivers. The sharks who dwell in the ocean do not care for the rivers, which are gliding down into it. The devotees eternally live in the ocean of devotional service, and they do not care for the rivers. In other words, those who are pure devotees always remain in the ocean of transcendental loving service to the Lord and have no business with the other processes, which are compared to rivers that only gradually come to the ocean. So this is the quality of a devotee. He has no time for anything else except Krishna Bhakti. He has no time for mental speculation. He has no time for Brahman Jyoti. He has no time for fruitive activities. His only concentration is how to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how to engage in Krishna Bhakti for the pleasure of Krishna. So therefore, the devotee is always dwelling in the Bhakti Amrita Sindhu, Bhakti Ras Amrita Sindhu, in the ambrosial, tasteful, nectarian ocean of Bhakti. Actually, Bhakti is not a dry process. Bhakti is a relishable process. Bhakti is a tasty process. Bhakti is a blissful process. Susukam avyayam. Even Krishna himself is saying in the Bhagavad Gita, Shishukam avyayam. Devotional service is blissfully performed, is happily performed. So that means the devotees do not care for any other process. They don't care for any other activity except those activities that connects them to Krishna. The next verse, the next slide, slide 33. Go to the next slide. So it says, arguments and logicians compared to volcanic eruptions in the ocean. Srila Rupa Goswami prays to his spiritual master, Srila Sanatana Goswami, for the protection of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of pure nectar of devotional service, from the argumentative logicians who unnecessarily meddle in the science of service to the Lord. He compares the arguments and logic to volcanic eruptions in the midst of the ocean. In the midst of the ocean, volcanic eruptions can do very little harm. And similarly, those who are against devotional service to the Lord, who put forward many philosophical theses about the ultimate transcendental realization, cannot disturb this great ocean of devotional service. So, as I mentioned earlier, the Ujjwala Nilamani says that scholars and academicians will be baffled. They will be baffled when they are exposed to the very deep knowledge of these rasas, especially the Madhurya rasa, is so deep that cannot be comprehended by scholars and academicians. So here Rupa Goswami is comparing the logic of such people from the, logicians, to be like volcanoes erupting in the middle of the sea. If a volcano erupts on top of a mountain, it will have a lot of effect on the environment because the lava will spout out and pour on the land and affect the environment. But if such a volcano takes place in the deep sea, and actually it happens, so many volcanoes are taking place in the deep sea, but nobody feels any effect because the sea naturally controls such volcanoes. So logicians who want to use logic to try to understand the science of Bhakti, the science of Krishna, they cannot. They are simply meddling in the science of the service of the Lord, and their arguments are nothing more than some tiny volcanic eruptions in the middle of the sea. So to understand the science of Bhakti, one must become a devotee. Unless one becomes a devotee, the science of Bhakti will elude him or her. So we see Krishna telling Arjuna that because you are my friend and devotee, that is why I am speaking this science of Bhakti to you. So the qualification to understand the science of Bhakti is not academic excellence. It is not logic. It is none of these things. It is simply bhakti. It says bhakti sanjaya taya bhaktya. Bhakti comes from bhakti. Bhakti originates from bhakti. Without bhakti, bhakti does not grow. Until we meet the giver, until the giver meets a pure devotee, until the giver meets a devotee, bhakti does not sprout. Bhakti will always sprout when one comes in touch with somebody who has bhakti. Before Srila Prabhupada went to the West, Krishna bhakti was unknown. It was unknown. But when the great devotee, pure devotee, went to the West and started planting the seeds of bhakti in the hearts of the Americans, immediately they sprouted. So logicians, academicians, scholars, and what have you, they have no access to Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu. They have no access to that deep, deep ocean of devotional service. Only the devotees who are inclined, favorably inclined to give Krishna pleasure, such devotees, they can understand the science of bhakti. They can understand the position of Krishna. So therefore, Rupa Goswami compares such arguments of scholars and logicians to be nothing compared to some tiny volcanic eruptions in the middle of the sea. So next verse is 34. Next slide. Slide 34, okay. So here, Srila Rupa Goswami exhibits his great humility. Bhakti Rasya Prashtutir Akila Jagan Mangala Prashangasya Agenapi Mayasya Kriyate Surhidam Pramodaya. Rupa Goswami says, though I am unqualified, I am writing this book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the source of all universal auspiciousness, to please my dear devotees, the pure devotees of the Lord. So on the slide, it says, the author of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami, very humbly submits that he is just trying to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, although he humbly thinks himself unfit for this work. That should be the attitude of all preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement. Following in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami, we should never think of ourselves as great preachers, but should always consider that we are simply instrumental in the previous acharyas, and we are instrumental to the previous acharyas, and simply by following in their footsteps, we may be able to do something for the benefit of suffering humanity. So, Rupa Goswami is a very exalted personality. As I mentioned last week, when we were about to start, I quoted some verses from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, describing the special position of Rupa Goswami. That Rupa Goswami was empowered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to rediscover all the lost places in Vrindavan. Vrindavaniyam Rasa Kalivartam. All the lost places in Vrindavan, Lord Chaitanya empowered Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami to rediscover these lost places of Krishna's pastimes. Kalena Vrindavana Kilivartaha. All the lost places of Vrindavan were revived by Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami. And I also mentioned that Rupa Goswami was very dear to Swarup Damodar. He was very dear to the devotees. He was very dear to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Priya Swarupe Daitaya Swarupe. Prema Swarupe Sahaja Birupe. Nija Nurupe Prabhu Eka Rupe. Tantana Rupe Swavilasa Rupe. That's Rupa Goswami was a dear friend of Damodara, Swarup Damodara. He was the exact replica of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he was an associate of the Lord. Actually, Rupa Sanatana and all the Goswamis, they were associates of the Lord. They're actually Manjaris. And so they came because the Lord has come as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they came to assist him in his mission of distributing love of Godhead. So Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Gopal Bhatt Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, these are very exalted personalities. They are eternal associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They are eternal associates of Krishna. And they came just to assist the Lord in spreading his mission. But just see the humility of Rupa Goswami here. He's saying that he's not qualified to utter the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. There is nobody as qualified as Rupa Goswami. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada writes here that that should be the attitude of all the preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement. Following in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami, we should never think of ourselves as great preachers. We should always consider that we are simply instrumental in the previous acharyas, and simply by following in their footsteps, we may be able to do something for the benefit of suffering humanity. So no matter how much knowledge we have gained from this Krishna consciousness, no matter how much knowledge we have gained from Bhakti Sastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhauma, Swadhyaya, the study of the scriptures, we should always remember that we are simply instruments to the previous acharyas, because without the previous acharyas, this knowledge would not be there. Rupa Goswami had not written this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and many other books, we would not have the access to them. If Srila Prabhupada had not come west, translated all these books into English, we would not have access to them. So whatever knowledge we have is simply by their mercy. And so following the footsteps of Rupa Goswami, we should simply see ourselves as instruments in the hands of the acharyas. So with that humble mood, humble attitude, then we can be empowered more and more the Lord is ready to empower the living entity, just as he empowered Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and so on. And he said that for 10 days, Rupa Goswami was with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Allahabad. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed him on this science of bhakti, on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and therefore entered his heart and gave him so much because Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, they were very humble. So the more we take a humble position in devotional service, the more Krishna will reveal this nectarian ocean in our hearts. The more we take a humble attitude, the more Krishna will use us as instruments. Like we see Arjuna was arguing with Krishna, but because he was thinking Krishna is my friend. Friends are always on the same level. You cannot call somebody your friend and then you think you're superior or he's superior. Friendship is based on equality. So Arjuna was initially thinking Krishna is my friend. Why should I listen to him? But then when he realized that it was not working, he was not getting anywhere with that mentality, he has to accept a subordinate position. He immediately declared himself a disciple and was now ready to listen to Krishna's authority. And then Krishna immediately assumed the position of an authority, and he began to speak to Arjuna. And what is the end result? The end result is that Arjuna emerged victorious in the battle. So Krishna empowered Arjuna so much that in front of all these powerful warriors like Bhishma Dev, Karna, and so on, Jairata, and so on, Arjuna, who was compared to a little fish, in front of these great Maharajas, Arjuna emerged victorious. So because he was simply empowered by Krishna. So similarly, when we take a humble position, a humble attitude, then Krishna can empower us unlimitedly with knowledge. So the example here is there. So in text, in slide 35, you can go to the next slide. What is happening? Okay. Slide 35 talks about the divisions of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The ocean of Bhakti is divided into 4 divisions. We have the Eastern Division, the Southern Division, the Western Division, and the Northern Division. These divisions are further divided into waves or laharis, just like in every ocean. So the ocean of Bhakti is divided into 4 divisions: the Eastern Ocean, the Southern Ocean, the Western Ocean, and the Northern Ocean. And just as oceans are characterized by waves, so these divisions are also divided into waves. So all our study is on the Eastern Ocean. From chapters 1 to chapters 19 is all within the Eastern Ocean. So we don't go into the Southern Ocean, we don't go to the Western Ocean, we don't go to the Northern Ocean. Bhakti Sastri limits us to the Eastern Ocean. And the Eastern Ocean, which is called Samananya Bhakti. Samananya Bhakti means devotional service in general. Samananya Bhakti, that is the first wave of the Eastern Ocean. Then the second wave is called Sadhana Bhakti. devotional service in practice. Then the third wave is called Bhava Bhakti. That is devotional service in ecstasy. And the fourth wave is described as Prema Bhakti. That is the perfection of Bhakti. So these are the waves we are going to be dealing with from up to chapter 19 of Nectar of Devotion when our course finishes. So in the slide, it says Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu is divided into 4 parts, just as the ocean is sometimes divided into 4 parts. And there are different sections within each of these 4 divisions. Originally, Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu, the ocean is divided like the watery ocean into east, south, west, and north, while the subdivisions within these different divisions are called waves or laharis. As in the ocean, there are always different waves, either on the eastern side, southern side, western side, or northern side. Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu similarly has different waves. So we can go to the next slide. So we see the 4 Nectarian oceans. The Eastern Ocean is called the Purva Vibhaga. It has 4 waves or 4 laharis. The Southern Ocean is called Dakshina Vibhaga. It has 5 waves of 5 laharis. The Western Ocean is called Pashima Vibhaga. It has 5 waves of 5 laharis. And the Northern Ocean is called Uttara Vibhaga. That has 9 waves or 9 laharis. We're not going to go into all this. Our course limits us to the Eastern Ocean, which is the Purva Vibhaga, which has 4 waves, dealing with general devotional service in practice, devotional service in ecstasy, and devotional service in pure love of Godhead. So that is what we shall be dealing with. We can go to slide 37. So slide 37 is now giving us a definition of devotional service. When we talk of devotional service, this verse gives us a definite definition of what is devotional service. Anya bila sita sunyam, gyana karmanadi anavritam, anu kulyena krishnanu shalanam bhakti uttamam. When first-class devotional service develops, one must be devoid of all material desires, knowledge obtained by monistic philosophy, and fruitive action. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. So this is the definition of actual devotional service. This is pure devotional service. When a devotee performs service favorably, this is very important, favorably. Anukulyena, devotional service must be performed purposely for Krishna's pleasure. When devotional service is performed for the pleasure of the performer, then it is not pure devotional service. It is mixed devotional service. It is performed with a fruitive mentality. It is performed with the aim of enjoying the result. Such is not described as pure devotional service. pure devotional service must be meant for Krishna's pleasure. Serving Krishna as Krishna desires without any material desire or without any motive is the foundation of pure devotional service. Is a major characteristic of pure devotional service. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentions Bhakti Mukti Sprihayavat Pisachi Hirida Vartate Tava Bhakti Sukasya Tra Katam Abudaye Bhavet. The material desire to enjoy the material wealth and the desire to become liberated from material bondage are considered to be two witches, and they haunt the living entity like a ghost. As long as these witches remain within the core of one's heart, how can one feel transcendental bliss? As long as these two witches remain in their heart, there is no possibility of enjoying the transcendental bliss of devotional service. So, to actually engage in Krishna Bhakti means giving up all other desires. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has demonstrated in his Shashtika prayers. Nandanam na janam na sundarin. Kavita vajagari sa kamaye. Ma janmani janmani shwari. Bhavati bhakti rahaitiki twai. That is pure devotional service. That is what satisfies Krishna. That is what Krishna is actually eager for. Krishna is simply eager for our devotion. That is very important. And that is why Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita, if you offer me a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or some water, with devotion, with bhakti, with bhava, then he accepts. So Krishna is not just interested in the fruit, flower, water, or leaf. There are leaves everywhere, there are fruits everywhere, there's water everywhere. Krishna can drink if he wants to. There are so many leaves and fruits everywhere. Krishna can pluck if he wants to. But the ingredient for offering these things to Krishna is most important. Bhakti, love. So the whole purpose of bhakti is to offer our love to Krishna. The whole purpose of engaging in bhakti is to gradually refine our desires, purify our desires, purify our aspirations, so that it comes to that quality of purity. That is when we can actually experience Krishna in our lives to the degree that we have no desire to enjoy the fruits of our actions, to the degree that our actions are purposely for Krishna's satisfaction. To that degree, Krishna reveals himself to the devotee. So this is what Bhakti-rasa Amrita Sindhu is trying to impart to us, that if we really want to attract Krishna, we really want to have Krishna, then all our actions, all our aspirations, all our desires must be how to make Krishna happy. And so this verse sets the tone. This verse is the foundation of our endeavor in devotional service. Anytime we are performing some service, we should remember this service, and we should remember this verse. Is it free from monistic philosophical persuasion? Is it free from fruitful activity? If yes, then it means Krishna is most happy. Krishna is relishing this service. So this is the tone to give us the understanding of Krishna consciousness. The next slide, slide 38, says devotionals. What is first-class devotional service? First-class devotional service is known by one's tendency to be fully, as the next verse 38, next verse 38, yeah. What is first-class devotional service? First-class devotional service is known by one's tendency to be fully engaged in Krishna consciousness, serving the Lord favorably. There are three primary characteristics in first-class devotional service. So we have what is called Swarup Lakshana, and Tatastha Lakshana. Swarup Lakshana means the intrinsic quality of devotional service. Swarup Lakshana, the intrinsic qualities of devotional service. And Tatastha Lakshana means the extrinsic qualities. Sometimes it says the primary qualities is Swarup Lakshana are the primary qualities or primary characteristics of devotional service. And the Tatastha Lakshana are the secondary characteristics of devotional service. Actually, the verse we just looked at, Anyam Bila Shita Shunyam, all the characteristics are defined in that verse. So the three primary characteristics, which are called the Swarupa Lakshana. Swarupa Lakshana, they are the three primary characteristics of devotional service. These are the three primary characteristics. Devotional service should be performed only for Krishna. Devotional service must be an active engagement. You cannot say you are performing devotional service and you don't do anything. You just sit in one place. No, that is not devotional service. Devotional service is an active engagement. And that is why the Acharyas have given us the 9 processes of bhakti. Actually, Prahlad Acharya has given us the 9 processes of bhakti in the Srimad Bhagavatam 7th canto. So a devotee must be engaged in these 9 different processes of bhakti. Without engaging in these 9 different processes of bhakti, how can we say we are active? Beginning with Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. These are basic, very important. A devotee must hear Shravanam. A devotee must chant, he must repeat Kirtanam. And a devotee must remember Smaranam. Devotional service is not a passive action where we don't do anything. We just sit down. No. Devotional service is an active engagement. And devotional service is executed with a favorable intent. So these 3 characteristics are described as Swarupa Lakshana of pure devotional service. Anyone who wants to render pure devotional service, these primary characteristics must be present. Service for Krishna. Actively engage, constantly engage in some service for the pleasure of Krishna. And rendering the service favorably for Krishna's satisfaction. These are the primary characteristics of pure devotional service. So anyone, this is like a barometer to check the quality of devotional service. One cannot say he's performing pure devotional service when these characteristics are missing. In the next text, text 39. Text 39, the next text. Okay. The general inclination of people of this world is material profit. Generally, people are engaged in different activities to get some material profit, while most philosophers are engaged in proposing transcendental realization through volumes of word jugglery and speculation. Pure devotional service must always be free from such fruitive activities and philosophical speculations. One has to learn Krishna consciousness of pure devotional service from the authorities by spontaneous loving service. So here, pure devotional service is differentiated from philosophical speculation and fruitive action. Philosophical speculation will not produce pure devotional service, and fruitive activity will not produce pure devotional service. Pure devotional service can only be learned from authorities who are pure devotees themselves. And that is why we are hearing from Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami is a very exalted personality. His heart is full of Krishna consciousness. He thinks of nothing but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He thinks of nothing but Krishna. We can even see Rupa Goswami saying that when I chant the holy names of Krishna, the ecstasy experience of my tongue makes him feel that he needs 1,000 tongues. And when the sound, the sweet sound vibration of the holy name enters his ears, the ecstasy he feels, he desires 1,000,000 ears. And when this sweet sound of the holy name enters the courtyard of his heart, he falls into oblivion. He gets lost into the ecstasy of Krishna consciousness. He doesn't know his bearings. He doesn't know where he is. So such devotees, such exalted Vaishnavas, such great souls, they can teach us Bhakti, just as he's doing now in this Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu. As we learned from the 6 purposes of why Rupa Goswami wrote the Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu, the 6 reasons why the Nectar devotion was compiled. One is to make us Goswamis. One is to make us lovers of Krishna. So we can always remember the 6 reasons why the Nectar devotion was compiled. While we are studying the Nectar devotion, we should always remember the reasons why the Nectar devotion was compiled. It is not an academic treatise. It is not an academic exercise. It is meant to transform our hearts. It is meant to transform our minds. It is meant to transform our whole being. It is meant to make us Vaishnavas, servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Generally, in this material world, everybody is interested in immediate results. Whatever action they perform, they want immediate results. That is the nature of this world, because they are limited to that result. They are limited to the external energy of the Lord. They are limited to the physical world. So everything they do, they want some physical result. And if there's no physical result, they're not interested. That is the general mood, the general attitude of the people of this world. Little do they know that there is another dimension where one can actually enjoy life without all these material things around us. One can enjoy life, which is completely spiritual. So Nectar Devotion is introducing us to that level of life, to that realm of existence where one can actually enjoy completely. And we can see that even the material objects, they cannot satisfy the soul. They may satisfy the mind, they may satisfy the intelligence, the ego, they may satisfy the body, but they cannot satisfy the soul, because the soul is spiritual. And these things are material. Material objects cannot satisfy the soul. They cannot. And so we see the material world, even though there is so much material resources, but everybody is still miserable. Everybody is still miserable. So Nectar Devotion is giving us the opportunity to learn the science of Bhakti, to learn the science of devotional service, so that we can dive deep into this transcendental ocean of nectar, which is awaiting us. Every living entity has a right to inherit this nectarian ocean, because every living entity is part and parcel of Krishna. So therefore, we have the right to inherit this nectarian ocean. But if there is no information, how can we approach it? So Rupa Goswami is giving us the information through the pages of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And we have to take it seriously so that our lives can be transformed. You can go to the next slide. Next slide, 40. Okay. Devotional service means cultivation. This devotional service is a sort of cultivation. It is not simply inaction for people who like to be inactive or devote their time to silent meditation. There are many different methods for people who want this. But cultivation of Krishna consciousness is different. The particular use by Srila Rupa Goswami in this connection is anushilana, or cultivation, by following the predecessor teachers. So, devotional service means cultivation. It means constant activity. constantly practicing, constantly endeavoring, constantly trying to do something for Krishna's pleasure. So we cannot be idle in Krishna consciousness. From the beginning of the day to the end of the day, a devotee has to be active, chanting one's rounds, studying the scripture, rendering some service, doing some preaching work, cooking for Krishna, cleaning Krishna's temple, working for Krishna, going out to meet people. Constantly, we have to cultivate devotional service. Devotional service is not meant for idle hands. It's not meant for lazy people. No, devotional service means activity, cultivation. So therefore, Rupa Goswami uses the word anusilana, cultivation, by following the examples of the predecessor teachers, the acharyas. We have to follow the teachers, devotional teachers, the spiritual masters, because they are practitioners. They have perfected in the practice of bhakti, and they set the example for us. And we have to follow those examples if we want to succeed in this path of bhakti. Bhakti is not a whimsical process. It is a scientific process. And the teachers are the acharyas who have lived this life of bhakti. They engage in bhakti. They are relishing bhakti. And therefore they can teach bhakti. So Rupa Goswami says, in the attempt to cultivate bhakti, we must take example from the predecessor teachers, the acharyas, previous acharyas. The Navayajendras, in their interaction with King Nimi in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, they made a very important statement that this human body is really achieved And even though it's really achieved, it can easily be destroyed. Dulabo manasho deha. Dulabo manasho deha. Dehinam shana bangura. Dehinam shana bangura. Now this human form of life is very difficult. Dulabam, very difficult to achieve. And even though it's very difficult to achieve, it is Dehinam Shana Bangura. Shana Bangura means easily destroyed. So therefore, one has to make the maximum use of this body. But then they even said that in this body, this human form of life, the greatest opportunity, the greatest advantage, how to utilize this body becomes possible when we meet the devotees of the Lord. Vaikunta Priya Dakshanaha. Vaikunta Priya Dakshanaha. when we have darshan of the devotees of the Lord of Vaikuntha, Vaikuntha prayer as the devotees of the Lord, when we have the opportunity to meet the devotees of the Lord who are very dear to the Lord of Vaikuntha, that is actually the greatest benediction for the living entity. So this is just to buttress the point that devotional service cannot be performed in isolation. Devotional service cannot be performed whimsically. Devotional service has to be cultivated following the footsteps of the predecessors acharyas, following the great devotees of the Lord who have perfected in pleasing Krishna. Text 41, slide 41. Salika Prabhu. Yeah, I would like somebody to read this. Anybody can read this. I'll be with you in a moment. That somebody read this slide. I have to go to the guns. Somebody can read it. On the back.
Hare Krishna. I read.
Okay, go ahead.
Can I go on?
Yes, Rasa.
So this slide 41. Thinking of Krishna and planning how to please him. Those who are cultivating spiritual life and executing devotional service are always engaged in activity. Such activity can be performed with the body. Thinking, feeling, and willing are all activities of the mind. When we the construction, thinking, feeling, willing are all activities of the mind. And when we will, to do something, the activity comes to be manifest by the gross body senses. Thus, in our mental activities, we should always try to think of Krishna and try to plan how to please him, following in the footsteps of the great acharyas and the personal spiritual master. Should I go by again?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yes, those who are cultivating spiritual life and executing devotional service are always engaged in some activity. Such activity can be performed with the body or with the mind. Thinking, feeling, and willing are all activities of the mind. And when we will do something, the activity comes to be manifested by the gross bodily senses. Thus, in our mental activities, we should always try to think of Krishna and try to plan how to please him, following in the footsteps of the great acharyas and the spiritual master. So, feeling, willing, thinking, feeling, and willing. These are the activities of the mind. Thinking, feeling, and willing. The activities of the mind. And then whatever we are thinking, whatever we are feeling, and whatever we are willing is executed through the senses. And the senses is manifested through the senses, and the senses move the body. So everything begins from the mind. Then it comes through the senses, and then to the body. That is how the whole activity begins. First, before you can perform some action, you must first think about it. It begins from the mind. Then you feel strongly about it. It's still coming from the mind. And then you now will to act. You want to do it. You want to execute it. Then the actions now is transferred to the senses. And the senses direct the body how to execute that action. So everything begins from the mind. Therefore, to practice Krishna consciousness has to begin from the mind. That's what Rupa Goswami is saying. It has to begin from the mind. Because whatever is happening in the mind will eventually happen outside. So it is said that those who are anxious to awaken their spiritual consciousness, who have unflinching intelligence, and who do not deviate, certainly they will attain their desired goal. Those who are anxious to awaken their spiritual consciousness, who have unflinching intelligence, and who do not deviate in their practice, will certainly attain their desired goal. There is some sound coming from somewhere. I don't know how. Let me close the window. There's some speaker in the community making so much noise. So I close the window so that the sound can reduce. So those who are anxious to awaken their spiritual consciousness, and they have unflinching intelligence, and will not deviate from the path of bhakti, they can easily attain their desired goals. So that means the mind should be engaged, because the mind is the master of the senses. The mind is the chief of the senses. The mind directs the senses. So whatever is happening in the mind will eventually manifest in the senses and finally be carried out by the body. So if we can infuse Krishna consciousness in our minds, if we can somehow or the other train the mind to think of Krishna, the mind will also influence the senses to think of Krishna, act for Krishna, and that will go on to influence the body in Krishna consciousness. So therefore, thinking of Krishna and planning how to please him should be our main engagement. That should be the devotees' daily activity. If you go to the next slide, this is slide 42. It says activity of body, mind, and speech. Slide 42. Activity of body, mind, and speech. There are activities of the body, activities of the mind, and activities of speech. A Krishna conscious person engages his words in preaching the glories of the Lord. This is called kirtan. And by his mind, a Krishna conscious person always thinks of the activities of the Lord as he's speaking on the battlefield of Kurukshetra or engaging in his various pastimes in Vrindavan with his devotees. In this way, one can always think of the activities and pastimes of the Lord. This is the mental culture of Krishna consciousness. The mental culture of Krishna consciousness. In this regard, Nanda Maharaj, in his discussion with Uddhava, makes a very significant statement. It says, Mana sovrita yona sur Krishna padambuja shrayaha. Vacho bidinayir namnam kayas tat pravana dishu. May our mental functions always take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. May our mental functions always take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. May our words always chant his holy names, and may our bodies always bow to him and serve him. So you see, beginning from the mind. The mind is the origin of everything. May our mental functions always take shelter. So if our mind is thinking of Krishna, if our mind is planning for Krishna's service, then automatically it will come out in our words, because the senses will carry it out, the tongue will carry it out. And once the tongue carries it out, then the whole body, once the senses carry it out, the whole body will follow suit. So body, mind, and speech are important in Krishna consciousness. So there are activities of the body, activities of the mind, activities of speech. A Krishna conscious person engages his words in preaching the glories of the Lord. This is called kirtan. So when we perform kirtan, we're engaging our speech. And when we engage our mind in thinking about the activities of Krishna in different pastimes, and then we can also engage our body in offering obeisances, in doing different services for Krishna. This is the way we can make use of the body, mind, and senses. Actually, that is cultivation. Cultivation means activity. We have to engage the mind, we have to engage the senses, we have to engage the body. And that endeavor has to be constant. Every moment we should be thinking how to engage the mind, how to engage the senses, how to engage the body in Krishna consciousness. If we want to achieve this desired goal of Krishna.
The Bluetooth device is connected successfully.
So, go to text 43, slide 43. It says initiation means establishing connection between the Jiva and Krishna. Therefore, the execution of Krishna conscious activities with the body should be directed by the spiritual master and then performed with faith. The connection with the spiritual master is called initiation. From the date of initiation by the spiritual master, the connection between Krishna and the person cultivating Krishna consciousness is established. Without initiation by a bona fide spiritual master, the actual connection with Krishna is never performed. So initiation means connecting the Jiva to Krishna. And that is why initiation becomes so important in our Vaishnava tradition, that one has to be connected by the process of Diksha. Actually, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is mentioned, also mentioned in the Hari Vilas by Sanarupa Goswami. Diksha kale bhakta kare atma samapana. Se kale Krishna tare kare atma sama. Now, at the time of initiation, When a devotee fully surrenders unto the service of the Lord, Krishna accepts him to be as good as himself. So this process of initiation is actually very, very important because it connects the jiva to Krishna. And not only that, it actually brings intimacy between the jiva and Krishna. And it's this intimacy that takes the living entity back home, back to Godhead. Until we develop this intimacy with Krishna, when we go back to the spiritual world, we may again develop some envious attitude towards the Lord. So, but when a living entity develops this intimacy via the medium of initiation, and one perfects in this intimacy, he becomes a sweet lover of Krishna, a sweet servant of Krishna, then there is no question of envy. There's no question of rebellion. There's no question of antagonizing the Lord's desire. So therefore, in the Vaishnava tradition, Diksha is very important. And that is also part of the cultivation that Rupa Goswami is talking about. Cultivation. We have to cultivate Krishna consciousness. And how do we cultivate Krishna consciousness? By associating with devotees. Actually, Rupa Goswami spells out in the Nectar of Devotion as well the steps of bhakti, beginning with Shraddha. When one develops some little faith, he wants to associate with devotees, sadhu sangha. And by associating with devotees, he is engaged in Krishna consciousness. It's called bhajana kriya. And by engaging in bhajana kriya, one goes through what is called anartha nivritti. So this is cultivation. It is an active cultivation. And initiation is part of it. Initiation is part of the bhajana kriya, as spelled out in the 9 steps of cultivation of bhakti to the level of prema. So anyone who wants to practice bhakti must accept a Diksha Guru, must accept a spiritual master and accept initiation. Of course, there are a few examples or a few exceptions. There are a few exceptions. Some Nitya Siddhas, they may not be initiated, they may not even accept a spiritual master, but because they are Nitya Siddhas, they are already linked with Krishna. Like the case of Srila Haridas Thakur, he was not initiated. He just chanted the holy name. Even before Mahaprabhu appeared, Haridas was already chanting. There are a few exceptions, but the general rule is that we have to take, the jiva has to be connected to Krishna by means of diksha. Sometimes also the spiritual master may not perform the external diksha, but he may perform an internal diksha, like the case of George Harrison. George Harrison never formally accepted initiation from Srila Prabhupada, formally, externally, no. But Srila Prabhupada accepted him as a disciple internally. And so he maintained his name, George Harrison, throughout his life. But he was a great devotee connected to Srila Prabhupada. So there are a few examples. But the general rule is that one must accept a Diksha Guru, and the Diksha Guru by initiation connects him to Krishna. And when he's connected to Krishna and the devotee is engaged in cultivation of Krishna consciousness, then Krishna accepts such a devotee to be as good as himself. The next slide, 44, says devotional service has nothing to do with the material wealth. One who is serious about spiritual life, that's 44, go to 44, this 43, okay. One who is serious about spiritual life is given intelligence by Krishna to come in contact with a bona fide spiritual master. And then by the grace of the spiritual master, one becomes advanced in Krishna consciousness. And in this way, the whole jurisdiction of Krishna consciousness is directly under the energy, under the spiritual energy, Krishna and the spiritual master. This has nothing to do with Bhakti, material wealth. It is mentioned that somebody's making noise. It is mentioned
Sorry, Maharaj.
that the Ladini Shakti of Krishna and the Sandini Shakti, they combine to give rise to the Bhakti Shakti, devotional energy, Bhakti Shakti. Actually, that is what is planted in the heart of every living entity when it comes in touch with spiritual master. The Bhakti Shakti, spiritual energy, is put into the heart of the jiva through the process of hearing. By hearing, one receives the seed of bhakti. So, devotional service has nothing to do with the material wealth. Devotional service is under the divine energy of the Lord, Ladini Shakti. And when this Ladini Shakti is combined with the Sandini Shakti, it produces Bhakti Shakti. And this Bhakti Shakti is transferred from the spiritual master's heart to the heart of the devotee through the ear by the process of hearing. So it is completely a spiritual affair. It is not a material activity. So we must understand that devotional service is not material. Krishna is not touched by material energy. Harihi nirguna sakshat. Purusha prakriti para. Krishna is always in a transcendental position. Prakriti para is in a transcendental position. And therefore is not touched by the gunas. Is without material gunas. And so devotional service is also, pure devotional service is also free from the gunas. So the next slide, 45.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, just give me a second for the next slide. I'm trying to change my network connection.
You're having problem with your network connection.
I'm trying to change
Okay.
the source of my network connection. In the beginning, there was a little challenge with my Wi-Fi, so I connected with my phone.
Okay.
So now call is coming to the phone and it's disturbing me. So I wanted to change the network back to my Wi-Fi.
Okay, we can give it. We can wait. So it's just a minute.
You can continue. You can speak, but it's just the slide. For me to show the slide, I'm just trying to connect so that I can connect back to the system so that I can do the slides.
Okay, so I'll give you some time. I'll just keep talking, and then when you finish, let me know.
Maybe the devotees can ask questions in the meantime.
Okay. So we can. If there are any questions, Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Dhanava pranams.
Dandava pranams. Glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Please, I want to know, in the introduction, you gave a submission that Srila Rupa Goswami considers himself unfit for writing a book, and he offers his obeisance to his senior brother, Srila Sanatana Goswami.
Sanatana Goswami, yes.
In the Krishna consciousness movement, severally we have heard in explanations, even when a speaker sits on a Vyasasan to give lectures, they will say that even though they don't qualify to sit on the Vyasasan to give lectures, they're just doing it as a call of service. But in other explanations, it has been given that even if you are a medical doctor and you have gone to school to learn what is medicine or doctorate or operation, you still have to learn under a qualified practitioner and have your license before you can become a practitioner. So when you meet a neophyte and probably like a book like this, a neophyte reads and it's like the writer is even saying he's unqualified. How does the neophyte understand this? Because if somebody is not qualified, how can the person guide you? So if the person who wrote the book says he is not qualified, then you reading the book, what is your stand? Please, I would love you to throw more light on this.
Thank you. Yeah, so what Rupa Goswami is trying to bring out is an attitude of humility. I think we would come across a discussion of Sanatana Goswami's humility. It is said that the main or principal quality of spiritual life or is humility. All other qualities develop from this humility. All other qualities develop from the quality of humility. Because when a devotee practices humility, a devotee really becomes humble, Krishna cannot resist sitting in the heart of such a devotee. Krishna cannot avoid manifesting in the heart of such a devotee. So, humility is very important, and that is why Mahaprabhu, in his third stanza of the Shashastikam, Trinara pi suni chena taro api sahisnuna amanena manadena kirtaniya sadahari. Mahaprabhu highlighted this in his 8 verses. That for one to chant the holy name and actually experience Krishna, this quality of humility is very, very important. And so we see in the life of very exalted devotees like Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual masters, we can see this character of humility is very strong, because from that humility, all other qualities develop. From that humility, Krishna cannot stay away from the heart of such a devotee. So Rupa Goswami is most qualified. He's overqualified, and that's why he's empowered to do this job. But he's just demonstrating his devotional humility. And we'll even see more of this and Sanatana Goswami. It is said that when Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they grabbed bunches of grasses and put it between their teeth, and they fell down before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Ramankeli and started crying. They were shedding tears. It's mind-blowing. Rupa, Sanatana, they're exalted personalities. They're actually manjaris. But when they met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the first time, they just grabbed some bunch of grass, put it in between their teeth, and they fell down before Mahaprabhu and they were shedding tears. They were crying, praying for Mahaprabhu's mercy. So the secret of advancement is humility in bhakti. So therefore, Rupa Goswami is simply teaching us by his personal example by saying he's not qualified, but he's the most qualified. I mentioned that in the Ujjwala Nilamani, which is discussing the details of Madhurya Ras, is mind-blowing. No intellectual, no academician, no logician, no scholar can try understanding that. It's beyond our mental abilities. It's beyond any conditioned soul's mental abilities. So if Rupa Goswami is not qualified, if Rupa Goswami is not empowered, how could he have written such detailed information, detailed knowledge about Madhurya Ras? He is most qualified. But just to demonstrate that a devotee has to be humble, that's why he's making that statement. And so we must follow in that example. And in fact, Prabhupada mentions in one of the slides, it says the preachers of Krishna consciousness, they must follow this example of humility. We should not think we have become so learned. We should not think we have become so powerful. We should not think we have now become mobile or moving encyclopedias. No, we are simply instruments of the acharyas, instruments of the spiritual master. That should be the mood and attitude of a devotee. Then one can attract Krishna to his heart. One can attract Krishna to his life, because Krishna does not like a proud servant. Krishna does not like a proud devotee. So from this Rupa Goswami's example, we should think deeply about it and try to mold our lives, cultivate Krishna consciousness in the mood of humility. And we are bound to succeed. We shall succeed as soon as we are able to cultivate this quality of humility. We shall succeed in Krishna consciousness. So that is what Rupa Goswami is trying to teach us by saying these humble words. So if Rupa is saying like this, then we should even do more, because he was already an empowered soul, and still he's making such statements. So therefore, we have to take cue from Rupa Goswami's example. I don't know, Salika Prabhu, are you ready? Can we move on?
Thank you, Maharaj, for the explanation. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, thank you. So can we move on, Salika Prabhu?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
I think my system just doesn't want to work with. I'll connect back the slide on my phone.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll connect it back on my phone. The Wi-Fi is not just seeing the system today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Prabhu.
Dandava pranams.
Dandava pranams, Prabhuji.
I want to know how possible is it for one in the spiritual world to envious of Krishna?
Well, that envy is not the gross envy we're talking about here in the material world. That envy is very, very subtle. When you just think, why is Krishna the center of activity? Why is everybody trying to please Krishna? This is very, very subtle. It's not gross. But as soon as that subtle desire, subtle thought comes into your mind, you are materially bound. You are bound for the material world. So that is why we have to cultivate the intimacy. We have to cultivate our love for Krishna to the degree that we should never question, why is Krishna the supreme enjoyer? Why is everybody trying to please Krishna? If you ask this question, or you just have the desire in the spiritual world, you are disqualified from staying in the spiritual world. So it's not a gross envy, gross attack, gross insult. No, it is very, very, very subtle. But Krishna understands. As soon as you develop that tendency, you're no more qualified to stay in the spiritual world. You have to come to the material world. So it's very subtle.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So let's move on. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Let's move on. We're on text
44. Now we're moving to
45, right?
yes.
Okay.
Just a second. All right.
So in 45, it says devotional service means activities favorable to the pleasure of Krishna. Activities favorable for the pleasure of Krishna. So somebody like to read this? Somebody like to read this?
Krishna Maharaj.
You can read.
Okay. Slide 45. Devotional activities favorable to the pleasure of Krishna. Devotional Krishna consciousness. Krishna conscious activities which are favorable to the transcendental pleasure of the Supreme Lord, Krishna. And any activity which are not favorable to the transcendental favor of the Lord cannot be accepted as devotional service. For example, great demons like Ravana, Kamsa, and Hiranyaka were always thinking of Krishna, but they were thinking of him as their enemy. This sort of thinking cannot be accepted as Bhakti or Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Krishna Anuslanam, cultivation of service in relation to Krishna. Swayam Bhagavan Krishna is the sole ultimate objective of all worship, which is indicated by the term Kevala Bhakti, exclusive devotion. In the Garuda Purana, it is mentioned, Vaj ityesa vai datur swayam parikritita tasmas seva Buddha prokta bhaktir sada bhuyashi. Thoughtful sadhakas should engage in the service of Krishna with great endeavor, for it is only by such service Bhakti is born Krishna Seva or loving devotional service is called Bhakti. Thoughtful sadhakas, that means practitioners of Bhakti. Sadhaka means a practitioner of Bhakti. Thoughtful sadhakas should engage in the service of Krishna with great endeavor. For it is only by such endeavor Bhakti is born. Krishna Seva simply means loving devotional service to Krishna. Or Bhakti means loving devotional service to Krishna. So as we were saying before, that there are two aspects of devotional service. One is called Swarupa Lakshana, which means the intrinsic attributes or characteristics of devotional service. And one is called Tatastha Shakti or Tatastha Lakshana, which means the secondary characteristics of pure devotional service. Bhakti means Anukulyena Krishna Anusilanam. Anukulyena Krishna Anusilanam. Favorably engaging in activities for Krishna's pleasure. That's what Bhakti means. That is the definition of pure Bhakti, which means cultivation of activities which are meant exclusively for Krishna's pleasure. It means cultivation through the endeavors the mind and body and words in Krishna's service. It also means cultivation toward the object of our affection through Manasi Bhava, sentiments of the mind and the heart. When the activities of one's body, mind, and words are favorably executed for Krishna's pleasure, that is called Bhakti. Shishupal, Kamsa, Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, they were 24 hours thinking of Krishna. 24 hours. They were thinking of Krishna. But their thoughts are not chronicled as part of Bhakti. Their thoughts, their activities are not included as Bhakti because their thoughts were not favorably disposed towards Krishna's pleasure. They were not thinking of Krishna's pleasure. They were rather thinking of Krishna as an enemy and how they would kill Krishna. So such thoughts, such activities are excluded from the platform of Bhakti. So the Swarup Lakshana, three primary qualities. In the Swarup Lakshana, that is a primary quality of pure devotional service, which is described as the intrinsic characteristic of pure devotional service. Devotional service must be for Krishna, not for anything else. Devotional service must be for Krishna. Devotional service is an active engagement. One must constantly cultivate it, constantly engage in it. It is not that we do it for some time and we go and leave for some time. No. Devotional service is a constant practice. On daily basis, one must practice Bhakti. On hourly basis, one must practice Bhakti. Minute by minute, second by second, one must practice Bhakti. This is the only way we can attract Krishna. If we do Bhakti for some time and do something else for another time, Krishna is not very much attracted. That is why Krishna is saying, Sarva Dharma Parityajya, Mamekam Shvana Vrajam. Abandon all varieties of religion, abandon all varieties of activities, and just surrender unto me. Krishna is demanding exclusive surrender. Because Krishna is complete. He is Purna. Om Purnam. Krishna is complete. And therefore, Krishna demands complete surrender. And only those who give that complete surrender to Krishna, they can experience Krishna in their life. So the Swarupa Lakshana, or the three primary characteristics or attributes of pure devotional service, is that one must perform service only for Krishna's pleasure. He must be actively engaged, and he must engage in those activities with a favorable intent. In the Tatastha Lakshana, or secondary characteristics, Anya Bilasita Sunyam, pure devotional service must be free from ulterior motives. And pure devotional service must be free from jnana, karma, and anavritam. It must be free from philosophical speculation and free from fruitive motives. So this is considered the Tatastha Lakshana, or pure devotional service. The secondary characteristics of pure devotional service. Devotional service must be free from ulterior motives, and devotional service must be free from philosophical speculation or fruitive pursuits. So, devotional service means to prosecute Krishna consciousness, Krishna conscious activities which are favorable to the transcendental pleasure of the Supreme Lord, Krishna, and any activity which are not favorable to the transcendental favor of the Lord cannot be accepted as devotional service. Therefore, great demons like Ravana, Kamsa, Hiranyakashipu, Shishupal, and the rest of them were always thinking of Krishna, but they were thinking of him as their enemy, and this sort of thinking cannot be accepted as bhakti, or Krishna consciousness. Text 46, we go to 46, slide 46. The next slide. Yeah, so here comes, I think, the second verse of the Nectar devotion for our memory verses. Sarvopa divinir muktam tat paratve nirmalam. Hirisikena sevanam bhakti uchite. One should be free from all material designations, and by Krishna consciousness must be cleansed of all material contamination. He should be restored to his pure identity, in which he engages his senses in the service of the proprietor of the senses. So, designations is the common feature of material existence. Designations is the common feature of material life. So many designations. Actually, the material world is a place of designations, and people enjoy these designations so much. Don't you know who I am? I am the managing director of so company. I am a medical doctor. I'm a lawyer. I'm a minister. I'm a prime minister. I'm a member of parliament. I am this. I am that. These are all designations. I'm a Brahmana. I'm a Kshatriya. I'm a Vaishya. I'm a Sudra. These are all designations. The designations. Our actual qualification, our actual nature, our actual identity is none of these. Nitya Krishna Das. That's our actual designation. Nitya Krishna Das. Dasa, dasa, anudasa. Maya Dvisa and Maya Vasa. Maya Dvisa means the Lord is the master, and Maya Vasa means the living entity is a servant. That is our eternal position. So the material world is a place of designations, and everybody is so much into these designations. So much. People love it. People enjoy it. People hanker for it. On the platform of Bhakti, one has to be free from these designations. That's what Rupa Goswami is saying here. One should be free from all material designations. And by Krishna consciousness, one must be cleansed of all material contaminations. He should be restored to his pure identity, in which he engages his senses in the service of the proprietor of the senses. The proprietor of the senses is Krishna. Actually, everything belongs to Krishna. The material world belongs to Krishna. If you go into the creation of the material world, you will see, where is it coming from? It's coming from Krishna. Actually, the material world, the so-called material world, is within the spiritual atmosphere. The kingdom of God is everywhere. Kingdom of God is the spiritual world, is everywhere. It is immense, is unlimited, expansive. The kingdom of God has no end. It's unlimited. Only the material world is limited. The material world is just a small cloud within the spiritual sky. Material world is a small cloud within the spiritual sky, where the desire of the living entities, those living entities who want to be away from Krishna, they generate this material sky. Krishna facilitates. The material energy is always in a subtle form. But when the living entities are desiring to be away from Krishna, Krishna facilitates. He immediately expands himself into the guna avatars, not the guna avatars, the Purusha avatars. Purusha avatars, Mahavishnu, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, Shirodakashaya Vishnu. These are the Purusha avatars. Immediately the living entity is desiring to enjoy like Krishna, to imitate Krishna. That desire allows the Lord to expand himself into the Purusha avatars, and then the material creation is effected. Mahavishnu glances at Mahatattva, and the living entities are injected into Mahatattva. Time is injected into Mahatattva. False ego is injected into Mahatattva. And the material elements are created from the interaction of the three modes of material nature. So where are the senses coming from? The senses are the interaction of the mode of passion and the false ego. The senses are nothing but the interaction of the mode of passion and the false ego. So where are they coming from? They're coming from Krishna. They are coming from Krishna's energy. So actually, the physical body, the senses, the material world, everything is coming from Krishna. So everything belongs to Krishna. But because we have that initial desire to compete with Krishna, to imitate Krishna, so when we take birth in the material world, then we begin to think, this is mine and that is mine. I am the owner of that and I'm the owner of that. But these things were there before you were born. And when you go, they'll still remain. The material world has been there from time immemorial. Nobody ever owns it. But in the time being, we are all claiming ownership. This is an illusion. Nobody owns anything in this world. We've come to meet the material world, and we'll go and leave it. We've come to meet the resources, we'll go and leave it. So everything belongs to Krishna. The senses, the body, the elements, everything is coming from Krishna. And therefore, an intelligent person will engage those things in the service of Krishna. So that is what Rupa Goswami is saying in this verse. His spiritual position should be restored. His pure identity should be restored, in which he engages his senses in the service of the proprietor of the senses.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, our time is gone.
Yes, please.
What's your question?
To that, I want to ask that the text in Gita 1866, which say Krishna said we should surrender unto him, we should abandon all religion and surrender unto him. Does that confirm the same text in the Bible, which is one of the 10 commandments, which says the Lord God is a jealous God, therefore we should serve no other God apart from him? I just want to know if that confirms it.
Well, the word jealous, I don't think in our Siddhanta, in our version of Siddhanta, we don't accept the word jealous for Krishna. What we say is that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. Krishna is a summon banum. He is complete. You see, jealousy, when you talk of jealousy, is a mundane term. There is no jealousy in Krishna. Why should Krishna be jealous of any living entity when actually everyone is coming from him? Krishna cannot be jealous of any living entity because we are all emanating from Krishna. Everything is emanating from Krishna. Both material and spiritual are emanating from Krishna. So how can Krishna be jealous of his own expansions? That's not possible. So that word jealousy is a materially motivated word. Because the living entity is jealous, so they somehow or other introduce that jealousy in the laws of God. But Krishna is complete, he's Purna. And because he's complete, he also wants complete surrender. That is the Vaishnav Siddhanta. Are you okay?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you.
So our time is spent. Can we continue for a few more minutes? I was thinking we should finish the chapter 1. I mean the lesson 1 today, so we can start the lesson 2 tomorrow. But I think we have a few more slides. We have okay. We end on 50, now 49 and 50. So we can just finish the few slides to end this lesson. Then we start lesson 2 tomorrow. Okay?
Okay, all right.
Do I get approval from all of you?
Let's start from slide 47.
Yeah, we are on 47 now.
Yeah, we are on 46 now. So the next slide is actually for tomorrow. Lesson 2.
I see. Okay. All right. Then.
That's why I didn't mention when I saw you. So I'm looking at that. So I thought maybe probably you wanted to get to the 46 before stopping.
Okay. So then we can end here. Then tomorrow we begin from
like
47, which is the second lesson. Chapter. Yeah. Before we end, there is a point I wanted to make, that the jiva's innate tendency of unalloyed devotional service towards the complete consciousness, which is Sri Bhagavan, is his Nitya Dharma. The Nitya Dharma means the eternal activity of the jiva is to have unalloyed devotion towards the Supreme. That is our Nitya Seva, Nitya Dharma, or Sanatana Dharma, our eternal occupation. But when the living entity comes in touch with the material energy, he becomes bewildered, he becomes deluded. So it is said, Bayam Duitiya Bidvinisha Siat, that the living entity is overcome by fear. Bayam is overcome by fear when it comes in touch with the material energy. And because of this fear, his good intelligence is lost. And so he does not think of himself as a devotee of the Lord. He doesn't see himself as a pure servant of the Lord. He sees himself as a master because his good intelligence is lost. So therefore, devotional service, bhakti, means going back to the Lord, means connecting with the Lord, means cultivating our life in such a way that we can be connected to Krishna. And then we can engage in our Nitya Dharma, Nitya Seva. And then automatically the fear, Bhaya, which is characteristic of this material existence, will go away. Every living entity in this world is fearful. Why are we fearful? Because we are thinking that we can be destroyed. We are thinking everything we own can be taken away, can be destroyed. We are thinking in terms of the body, in terms of the senses, because they are subject to destruction. But when we come to the spiritual level, we understand our position as eternal servants of Krishna, Jivatmas, eternal parts and parcels of Krishna that cannot be destroyed by anything. Then this fear goes away. So by cultivating Krishna consciousness regularly, constantly, we can come back to this platform of fearlessness, abhaya. When one becomes completely fixed in Krishna consciousness, fear goes away and he comes to the platform of abhaya. So that is what Rupa Goswami wants to give us. He wants to bring us to the platform of abhaya, fearlessness. He wants to connect us to Krishna, and when we are connected to Krishna, fearlessness will go. So thank you very much. If there is a question, you are welcome. If there is no question.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Please accept my obeisances, Prabhuji.
Jai, all glories to Krishna Prabhupada.
Thank you for the nice class. It was enjoyable.
Thank you for giving the opportunity to serve you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Please, I want this this material world is part of the whole spiritual sky.
Yes.
Was there any time when there is no, any time in the history when there is no material world?
Yes, there is. There is a time when there is no material world. The material energy is subtle. So in eternal form, it does not manifest. The energy is an eternal energy of Krishna. Shakti is an eternal energy of Krishna.
Okay.
Sometimes it's manifested, sometimes it's not manifested. But it's manifested according to the desire of the living entities. Krishna does not need the material energy to manifest. He doesn't need it. But according to the desire of the living entity, it is manifested. So in a subtle form, it is not physically present. We just have the spiritual existence. But because of the living entity desire, so from time to time, it is manifested. So there is a creation and there is a destruction. So when it is destroyed, it is withdrawn. It is no more. There is no material atmosphere anywhere. It's withdrawn. Withdrawn into Mahavishnu. No material environment anywhere. It goes back into its subtle form. But because of the living entity desire to enjoy away from Krishna, then after a period of time, again, it is manifested to give them the opportunity. Actually, The material creation is actually meant to help us go back to the spiritual world, because the material world is a very difficult place. It's a very, very tough place.
Exactly.
So, whose intelligence become developed, they understand that this is a very difficult place. Let me get back to the spiritual world. So that is the lesson the material creation gives us. It exposes us to a lot of difficulty, and then we surrender to Krishna and we go back home. We don't come back here. So it is manifested and unmanifested, just to help us to go back home, back to God.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you. Thank you, Gurudev.
Hare Krishna.
Hare.
So we will see tomorrow. I have another meeting at 10 o'clock. I'm already 3 minutes to the meeting. So I'll take your indulgence so that we close today and we shall continue tomorrow.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Your Holiness. We will meet tomorrow. We want all of the students to please kindly unmute. Let us loudly chant Hare Krishna to appreciate.
Hare
Krishna,
Hare Krishna.
Krishna, Krishna,
Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Rama. Hare Krishna.
Vanacari.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Haribo.